Great morning, family. I am Tanya Brooks, your FBA community folk herbalist. It is the last day of May 2024. It is May the 31st. So listen, I hope everybody had a great evening, and I hope we have a great kickoff for the weekend. And we'll be stepping into the first weekend and the first day of June on tomorrow. But that's not what this is all about. This video has to do with unforgiveness and how it manifests in our lives if we hold on to it. So the title of this is Unforgiveness times anger divided by manipulation equals a liar. Okay? Say that again. Unforgiveness times anger divided by manipulation equals a liar. I am not a certified therapist, licensed doctor, psychiatrist, psychologist, any of that. But what I am is I am a woman who has lived a little bit of life, and I have been all of those, or I have held on to all of those emotions, characteristics in which I just mentioned. No longer. Grateful for that. But my unforgiveness, I will directly relate it to the unforgiveness that I had toward my father. And, for whatever reason, I am dealing a lot with, the relationship that I, as a daughter, had with her father. And I know that I'm doing this because, one, I'm being led to do it, and this is helping a lot of sisters, a lot of women out there. So I had a lot of unforgiveness, and it times the anger, or moved into anger, and then that anger made me a great manipulator. And if you are a manipulator, you are a liar. You're a liar. And at this point, some of you are like, oh my goodness, I can't watch this. Then don't. But for those of you that this resonates with, continue to watch or listen to what I'm being led to talk about, and get free, right? So because of my unforgiveness and how it traveled into my adulthood, right? Because it started off, my unforgiveness started off as, childhood trauma that I experienced in the home. And that childhood trauma directly relates to the abuse in the home, that I saw and experienced, that my dad, how my dad abused my mom physically, mentally, emotionally, and how my brother and I suffered from that abuse emotionally and psychologically and mentally, as well. And my father was also verbally abusive to my mother. But I became one that did not, or I harbored a lot of unforgiveness in my life towards my dad. And because my parents did eventually divorce, And so when they divorced, I did have to, I was 12, so I did like have weekend visitations with my father. But my father's relationship and I was very strained, and I had a lot of unforgiveness towards my dad. And that unforgiveness definitely turned into anger. I became a very angry young girl, and it traveled obviously into me becoming a young woman. And so when I had relationships as a young woman, I still harbored the unforgiveness towards my father, and I was still very, very angry, even to the point where in my other relationships, the men or the man that I was involved with felt the wrath of my unforgiveness. So with me not being able to, or with me holding on to unforgiveness towards my father, I did not trust the person that I was in a relationship with. Did not trust, did not wouldn't take anything if they showed any signs of familiarity, like what my father would have displayed. I would just blast them. And the anger, the way I would talk to them, the way I would handle them, it was out of anger and out of unforgiveness towards my dad. And this person had absolutely nothing to do with my childhood trauma and my relationship with my father. And my father and I, even as a young woman, we communicated on a regular basis. But I dealt with my dad out of a lot of unforgiveness and anger still towards him. The way I would communicate with him, the way I would, I got something on my eyelash, the way that I would talk to him, things like that. And I was very disrespectful in my communication with my father because of the anger. And what I was looking for, and this is something that's very key, what I was looking for from my dad, and I need you to hear me, is I wanted my father to apologize for all of the things that he did towards my mom. And of course that spilled over. But the thing about unforgiveness is I need you to understand that you may never get that apology from that individual that hurt you when you were a child. And to recognize that. Recognize it right where you are right now. That person may have passed on, and you definitely won't be able to get the apology from them if they have not apologized to you, right? And then so the next phase of that is the manipulation. Because of the unforgiveness, because I was very angry, I became a great manipulator. And I spoke about this as a young girl, because a lot of times the fighting and things would take place over the weekend. The police would leave our home at like maybe 2:00 in the morning, a.m. And it's Monday morning, and then, basically in another 4 hours, my brother and I, we have to get ourselves together. My mother would get us together for school, and we would go to school. I'm just giving you an example of how the great manipulator developed. And we would have to go to school and go through life, our day, like none of this just happened 4 hours ago. And this was a continual thing. So I became a great manipulator, manipulating life, and acting as if these things didn't traumatize me, they didn't affect me, because at the end of the day, my mother was like, you still got to go to school. You still got to get good grades. This is something that is between you, me, and your dad. This has nothing to do with you and your brother. These are the things that, we were told. And you want to please your parent. I was that type of child. I wanted to please my parent. And okay, so I did that. So I learned to put on these masks and manipulate what was really going on in my life. So when you become a great manipulator, you become a great liar. And that's what I was. And because of the unforgiveness, which times the anger divided by the manipulator, which equals me being the great liar, I was, and this is so key, listen to me, y'all, I was a horrible Christian because I had all of these flaws, characteristics embedded in me. I was a horrible Christian. I am no longer a Christian, nor do I practice any type of man-made religion. I want that to be very clear. But what I learned hence is I remember saying to myself, when I was a Christian for 10 years. I remember saying to myself, I would say 7 years. I would say to myself, I'm not a good Christian. And no, because if I went by the teachings of the Bible and all of those flaws went against that I embodied, right? The unforgiveness, the anger, the manipulation, and ultimately the liar, those all went against what it was to be a good Christian. And I remember getting up, getting prayer and getting prayed over and all of that. And whoever the pastor was at the time I was only a member of 2 churches. They would see those flaws. Have a good day. Remember, no track practice. They would see those flaws and they would call them out. And there I'm sobbing and they're telling me, get rid of the anger. Get rid of the anger, and I see such and such and such and such over you. And I'm just looking at my son getting on the bus. And I would see, and they would say, I see the spirit of a liar and da-da-da-da-da. But they never really took you into counseling behind closed doors and talk to you, because I think that's what a lot of Christians struggle with, those characteristics that I spoke about. And it wasn't until after I left Christianity and really got therapy and just did some soul searching and started meditating, practicing meditation and writing out my feelings. These were all things that the good Lord led me to do that helped me learn to and accept forgiveness. I forgave my dad. And it had nothing to do with any type of religion. It was something inside me, the good Lord, the soul that he gave me was like, you gotta forgive. You gotta forgive to live. And so I forgave my father, while he was still in the earth. I never told him, Daddy, I forgive you. But, the way I let go of the anger and because I recognized where it all came from. And I recognized that I was a manipulator, and I was a liar, and those things were controlling me in my life. And I recognized where it all stemmed from. And I was like, that's not me. That's not when the good Lord gave me my soul, that's not what was in my soul. You know, to be that type of a person, to be an unforgiving person, to walk around in anger and manipulate, which made me a liar. So I let go of all of that stuff, and I let all of that go by forgiving my dad, you know, by forgiving him and taking care of him and doing for him. Because the bottom line is, just like I had no control over the abuse my mother suffered and my dad inflicted on her, my father, and I came to that, my father had no control over his mother passing 6 hours after she gave birth to him. My father had no control over his father and my grandmother coming together and in a relationship that was really unorthodox. My grandfather was a married man, and he was a much older man. He wasn't married to my grandmother. She was a young 21-year-old woman, and my grandfather was 36 and he was married. My father had no control over that. So here it is, he has no control over that. He becomes, I'm sure, probably unforgiving and anger, and he definitely became the great manipulator and the liar, right? But those things, he had no control over that. And so that made him into the man that he was. And the same way I had no control. So you gotta forgive. Unforgiveness does not make you strong. Anger does not make you invincible. The manipulator or the manipulation does not make you invisible to pain and life, right? And definitely the lying or the liar does not put you in this bubble of protection, because those are all the things that we think those horrible characteristics give us. All right, so forgive that person or those persons, right? Release the anger, because understand that you are angry because of the unforgiveness. The unforgiveness, I'm sure it has to do with something that you have no control over, what has happened to you, right? Manipulation is a fakeness. It's a facade. It's a mask. It's not who you really are at your soul, at your core. And a liar, well, a liar will do and say anything. And that's not who you are. All right, family. I hope this helped you. I know it did. Remember, be great to yourself because you are great. Be great to your family. They deserve your greatness. Be great to your community. Without love, self-love, we have absolutely nothing. And as always, clarity is key, but without consistency, we have no balance. No. Unforgiveness times anger divided by manipulation equals a liar. Family, be well.